Hey guys, it's Crossroads here. Today I wanted to talk to you about Palantir earnings. I give you a little earnings preview. Earnings for Palantir is coming tomorrow. That's Monday after hours. As you may know, Palantir is my largest position. It's one that's actually a little bit less now than 50% of my portfolio. It's a mammoth, and I'm very excited for earnings. I'll give you the top line numbers first. I think that they'll post a double beat. I do think there's going to be a miss on EPS guidance. Overall, I'll cut to the chase first. I do think that Palantir is going to post some really good numbers, but I do think that there is a chance of an EPS miss. And so it may be a double instead of a triple beat. Let's go ahead and break down the numbers and take a look. Now, first, let's look and see what the analysts are expecting. And so we can see with Palantir here, this is adjusted EPS, by the way. And so we can see that they're coming in with an 11-cent EPS. The analysts are all over the place with a 1 cent is a low estimate, 14 cents is a high. I think it'll actually come in just a little bit above average on the adjusted earnings as far as EPS. And revenue is coming in at about 781 million. Now, as far as my expectations, I think that we'll actually beat the analysts' expectations for revenue. I'm seeing about a 29.5% revenue growth, which rounds up to about 30% year over year, so about $795 million. The reason why I'm expecting that, actually, first, the reason why that's so important is usually the market looks at companies that are growing at a 30% or higher growth rate as fast growing companies. If it's under 30%, it's slow growing. And I know that there's maybe not much difference between 29 and 30 on a revenue standpoint, but this stock is trading well above its fundamentals. It's trading on a narrative, and it's a well deserved narrative. But if it falls to 29 or 28, there could be a little bit of pain in the price action. Now, what am I seeing as far as revenue? Why am I seeing that it's accelerating to that point, about 30%? Well, first, let's look at the comps. So if we look back here, we can see the revenue, and you can see in quarter four, they had about $608 million. You can see they're visualized right here that it was a nice spike up. And so it's a harder year over the year comp for Palantir. That said, I think that there's a lot of things going for Palantir that is going to help them ramp. US commercial numbers will continue to climb. I think we're actually going to see a really healthy net dollar retention of about 120%, which is an acceleration from 118%. If you're not familiar with that, net dollar retention is what Palantir measures as clients who have been clients for at least a year, as they expand and monetize AIP, as they add on and expand some of those existing contracts with Palantir. We're seeing a lot of that, by the way. Then that's counted for that revenue that's accelerating as net dollar retention. The more of that you have in a business-to-business type of platform like Palantir, the easier it is to reach those high growth numbers simply because you're selling to your existing clients instead of just trying to onboard a whole lot of other clients as well. So that will certainly help them. As far as revenue beyond that, international looks like it will be a little bit of a drag. Now, the good thing is this is one of the last quarters where SPAC drag really hits Palantir, and it's not even that much, especially compared to their overall revenue. But international is slowing by quite a bit. There's not a lot of excitement as far as Palantir's products, especially in Europe, simply because they don't seem, for the most part, like they're really wanting to embrace AI. They're just wanting to regulate it first. So not ideal for them, not ideal for Palantir, but this happens. Now, as far as actual EPS, so this is GAAP EPS, it's non-adjusted. Analysts are probably a little bit off here. We saw that they had a 3-cent prediction there. And one of the reasons why that's substantially lower than the adjusted EPS is because we have what's happening is called SARs. These are stock-based compensation that's given to employees of Palantir. This was something they decided on about a year ago. They said, if Palantir actually hits $50 a share over a certain amount of time, then they will award a lot of additional stock-based compensation to employees. The amount depends on a lot of different factors, but there's some estimates that expect that it's going to be about 120 million worth of stock. So as far as dollar amount, by the way. We won't know for sure until the earnings actually come out, but that does go against the GAAP EPS. And as a result, it could be a bit of a drawdown. Now, let me pull up another slide here just to kind of show you if it is 120 million, we can see right here that the GAAP earnings was 6 cents a share, up 3 cents a share year over year last quarter, and 143 million was a net income. Now, without the SAR hit, this would, of course, be a good bit higher as revenue continues to spike. They continue to maintain just absolutely excellent margins. Rule of 40 is certainly something that they tout. And you can see here Rule of 40 for Palantir, which is very important for companies such as SaaS, is 68%. That probably will climb maybe close to 70%. We'll see if we can even break that. This is just phenomenal execution as they continue to show that they have full pricing power and control over their margins. That said, that realization of those stock grants all of a sudden are going to count against this net income for one quarter. There's even a possibility, depending on how much is actually granted, that Palantir posts a negative GAAP EPS. Now, non-GAAP, still going to be very good, 11, 12 cents. The market may not like that too much, especially because the average for analysts, again, is 3 cents. I think one of those factors, too, for analysts is that some analysts just don't update the numbers that much, and they may not realize that the SARs are actually going to be a hit this quarter. And so that's why you see some disparity on both sides of the EPS expectations. Now, as far as other numbers, I predict that Palantir will show customer count increasing by about 7% this year. So I'm expecting about 672 customer count this quarter, really. And so here are the numbers from their slide. And what we see is, of course, it's up 39% year over year, a lot higher for US commercial. Government's also doing quite well. But you can see sequentially that these numbers have decreased over time from 10, 11%, 7, and 6% as well. And what's happening here is an adoption curve. Basically, when a new technology comes out, you always have some, whether it's individuals or companies, that are forward thinkers that are early adopters. And they see what Palantir offers, especially because of the way that they offered it through boot camps. And you could just try with your own data and actually see that you had real tangible results that have a real tangible impact to your company and your bottom line very quickly. So that excited a lot of these forward-thinking individuals and companies. And as a result, you saw a massive growth wave for Palantir. Now, we will see revenue continue to ramp because of net dollar retention, as many of these clients that onboarded maybe a year ago, maybe a little bit longer. Some have been on, less long, but they continue to expand contracts with Palantir, and Palantir's AIP is being monetized. But as far as this adoption curve, you have those early adopters, and then you have late adopters, and in the middle is a bit of a valley. So on the late adoption side, you have companies that are just obdurate. They don't like change. They don't change unless they're actually forced to. And market conditions and competition do force them to, but it can take several years, depending on the industry, for them to realize, hey, we are falling behind and we are trying to use something that is just not that useful. Many of them are trying to use cheaper alternatives like Microsoft Fabric, or piecing together a lot of different enterprise client solutions from a lot of excellent names, but it just doesn't offer the same advantages as Palantir Foundry or Palantir AIP. And it will take them possibly years to actually be able to understand what's happening. And so we're in a bit of a valley as far as what customer count is. At least I think so. I'd love to be wrong on this, but it may take, maybe a year or so before we really see customer count really ramp back up into double digits, especially as many of those later adopters come in. By the way, I think quite a few of those late on the adoption curve are internationally, not Southeast Asia so much, but in Europe. We've seen that, as far as their way of viewing and looking at technology and their rush to regulate AI instead of actually develop and use it. So hopefully I'm wrong there. Would love to be wrong for Europe's sake and also for Palantir's, but that's why the customer count might lag a little bit as well. The other reason too is it's a law of large numbers. That when this number was a much smaller for Palantir, it was a lot easier for them to put up double-digit sequential increases versus as this number continues to climb. And I know 629 clients isn't massive, but it still becomes increasingly difficult unless there's a massive wave of adoption to really hit that double-digit sequential growth. Now, they're still going to show great numbers, but that's certainly what I'm looking at as well. Now, lastly, as far as guidance, I expect that Palantir will actually come out with about 30% year-over-year revenue growth for their guidance for this next year. Now, part of the reason why I think that is because there's a lot of net dollar retention that's coming. I think that's going to continue to spike up over the next couple of quarters. And there may be increased adoption on the governmental side. Now, I know the government is trying to cut and be efficient, but we see that Palantir has become, with the government, almost a household name here in the United States. And I think that there's a pretty good chance of some pretty large contracts that come in. Now, I don't think Palantir wants to bake all of that in. They tend to sandbag just a little bit and want to overperform and outdeliver on a consistent basis, like they usually do. But with that said, I think that on the full year, they'll probably actually grow about 35% revenue year over year, but they'll guide for maybe about 30%. I think that'll be good enough that the market will be pleased with these results. Although, if EPS does come in negative for this quarter, there is definitely a chance, just because of the price action of Palantir and it's trading more on a narrative at this point than fundamentals, that we see a pretty large drawdown in the stock. Now, I don't think that's like 70, 80, 90% that's going to bring it back to like $10. But there's a good chance that we do see 50s and 40s in that scenario. Now, I don't believe that scenario, but there's at least a chance that you need to be aware of so that you can make a decision now. If that happens, what do you plan to do? Myself, I sold a chunk of my Palantir for the first time as far as shares. And if we see mid 50s and lower, and even in the 40s, for me, I see that as a buying opportunity, even though, yeah, I know the price to earnings and the price to sells and the PEG ratio, that those still look really, really high. But this is a phenomenal company. There's no other company that has products like Palantir. They're a unicorn in the market, and I plan to buy and hold this accordingly. Now, if we don't get a dip, that's perfectly fine. Again, it's my largest position, and I don't mind continuing to see it go up as long as my poor covered calls, some of which are still underwater, don't get completely submerged. That could also happen as well, but these are nice problems to have. Anyway, let me know what you think in the comments. Do you expect that they will have a triple beat, or do you have some concerns about SARS? Let me know your plans if we do get a massive drawdown on Palantir, or are you planning to take some off the table? It's not wrong to take gains. You need to make the decision for yourself. Thank you, as always, for watching, commenting, and subscribing. And for now, happy investing.